So, welcome to Move Your Brain, Move Your Body podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So happy to have you. So, Torin,
Yeah.
you work here in Lincoln, Nebraska.
I do.
But tell me a little bit more about yourself.
All right. So I'm originally from Colorado. I was born and raised in Colorado Springs.
Okay.
I've got two brothers. I've got an older brother and a younger brother. My older brother has cerebral palsy.
Okay.
So is a spastic quadriplegic in a wheelchair, has been going to physical therapy since practically the day he was born.
Wow.
So I grew up kind of going to PT clinics.
Wow.
And pediatric PT is kind of fun. So it's swings and pools and horses and games. And I got drug along because I'm the younger brother, right? So we go to PT once a week for my whole life. So that's kind of where I initially got interested in PT. So I kind of knew from a young age, as you kind of get older, like, oh, there's actually like a point to this. It's not just like we have a play date every week. Like there's a purpose behind it. So I knew early on I wanted to go to PT. And then I got involved in sports. I was a swimmer through high school and through college, and kind of saw more the way the body works and that kind of stuff, and I got interested more in that. So I already had kind of this idea I was going to PT school, and ended up in PT school in North Dakota. So I went to the University of North Dakota. So we talk about being cold in Nebraska. It's not, right? So that's why I walk over in this, because I spent 15 years in North Dakota.
Wow.
We joke we moved to Nebraska for the nice winters.
That's hilarious.
Which is true. But I went to the University of North Dakota because I could swim. I swam on the swim team before I got into PT school, and it was a 3-year master's degree program at that point. So I got through college in 5 years and I graduated. And going through PT school, which is kind of a unique experience, right? And North Dakota is a great school, but it's really gearing people towards rural health. Right, so a lot of people who go to PT school there, go to med school there, are from that area. So if you're in rural health, you see everything. You're going to be the geriatric person and the pediatric person and the sports person and the
great.
So it's a very good, well-rounded
background.
So I got a lot of everything.
Yeah.
And kept asking lots of questions in PT school, particularly the why question. Right? Why did this happen? Why was this? And we don't have time for that. We don't have time for that.
Yeah.
Or you'll get that next year. And then I graduated, right? And then I'm done, right? So I have this degree, and I don't really know anything. I mean, I know what to do, but I don't know why I'm doing any of it. And then I wanted to get paid because I wanted to get a job.
Right.
So the place where I got one that people wanted to pay me was in Sioux City, Iowa. So I'd never been to Sioux City, Iowa.
That's not far from here.
No,
Because I know Dr. Coffin's there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of a wild way that works. So I ended up in Sioux City, Iowa at a hospital setting there, and this is in year 2000. So really the institute is just kind of really barely kind of a thing, right? And I started asking some of my coworkers, like, I know a little bit, but like, what should I learn? What should I do? Who knows why these things are like? I don't want to know taping or I don't want any more I don't want any more tools. I want to know why things are happening.
Right.
And so Jane Stanley, who's a PT now, she's still in Sioux City, and she's a PRC now, says like, hey, I just took this course from this guy in Lincoln, and I think maybe you'd be interested. And they're doing a course in Norfolk, Nebraska in a couple months. You should go to it. And it was a protonics course, and I came and learned about protonics. And it was the first time somebody actually started to put some pieces together. And that was, hey, this hamstring thing isn't just a hamstring. It's not just a inanimate object that's too tight or too loose or too weak, whatever in your body. It actually has some connections. And of course, the course is geared towards, well, if you do this protonics thing, you get a hamstring, you can help knee pain.
Right. Yeah, I've seen the device.
Yeah.
We talked about
it's
it.
Like it's like old school, like old school PRI.
It was like how he had to kind of get started because he needed something
that people with a biomechanics mindset would understand. Well, if we can just affect the rotation of that femur, we'll get the kneecap lined up. So it's not the kneecap's fault; it's the femur's fault. Like that was the initial why.
Yeah.
But what struck me was not the kneecap thing was. And of course, you know how these courses go. Well, now watch what happens to this neck, right? And you go, wait a second.
Oh, so he was even doing that stuff.
Right.
Because I think.
And shoulder, he knew it all.
Yeah.
Right. He was.
Just need to
he didn't know
one piece at a time for the public.
Yeah. So, but he would just, he'd just throw those little tidbits in there, oh, yes, this knee thing is pretty cool, and that's what this course is about. Watch this, and then just a little magic. And he's like, well, somebody finally kind of can put these pieces together. So that was kind of, the initial hook. We all have our initial hook.
Wow.
And so I took, I don't know how many courses I took right off the bat. At that point, there was lower half and upper half.
Oh, wow.
Right, so there's two. And this protonics course. So it wasn't even myokin or postural, but it was lower and upper, right? And then there was a cervical course, and I took that. And then I got married along the way. I met my wife in PT school. We met over a dead body. Long story. We could talk about it if you want to. In PT school, so that's where that kind of comes from. And after we got married, we moved back up to North Dakota, which is where she was from.
Okay.
where people had never heard of PRI.
Sure.
So now I'm back in this world where I'm trying to like drag people along, and everybody's still doing sleeper hold stretches and all these things.
Oh, we
and,
still have that now.
Oh, I know we still do,
I
and
know.
I'm sure some of my coworkers are still kind of doing that. But there's a couple that you kind of like, oh, they kind of get it, and now there's a good little hub in North Dakota. Now there's some people that
Good.
students that I have that have taken courses and are now, athletic training teachers in the colleges, and so you can kind of see those little bubbles grow up, which is kind of cool. But still started taking courses, and after a while, my wife's sister moved away, and then her parents got to the age where they were going to move away, and we're like, okay, we're the only ones left in North Dakota.
Yeah.
Like, we don't really want to be here anymore. Not that we don't want to be there, but like, we're ready for something different.
Yeah.
We don't have any family around. It's cold. We were working in a hospital. It was really, it was fast paced, and it was 20 patients a day, and you get half-hour evals. And at that point, we had 3 kids, and my wife had dropped down from working full time, and then she was working 20 hours a week, and then she had just kind of decided, you know what, it's just not even
Worth your time.
I'm working to pay for daycare. Like, so she's gonna stay home. It's like, well, it's just me. So we started looking for jobs, and there happened to be an opening at the clinic.
Wow, timing. That's crazy.
Yeah, and I was like, well, that would be kind of cool. Unless my wife was like, yeah, that'd be kind of cool. Like, we have no connections to Lincoln at all.
Wow.
Like, I'd driven through Lincoln. I'd come to courses in Lincoln, but
Sure.
no, nothing. So I applied and came down and met Lori and Ron and everybody and got hired, and
Rest
kind
is
of
history. When was that?
That was 2011.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've been here for
So I've
quite
been
some
here,
time
yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's a good background.
So yeah, and then from once I get here, then you're really actually finally able to really just jump in and do
Yeah.
PRI. Because before it was like you're doing PRI, but you're also like,
Well, there's integration and all that aspect
Yeah.
here, and you're surrounded by the top, so
yeah.
it's completely
In
different.
2011 is about the time PRI Vision was kind of starting, so we hadn't actually added on to the building yet, but pretty soon after I got here, we were building an addition onto the building to house PRI Vision, and so that was just kind of in its infancy of development. So it was kind of a good time to get started.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you told us a little bit about your background, and then I want to talk about Prime itself.
Okay, yeah.
So we're here right now, and what's across the street, and just like tell us a little bit about what you're doing here and why it's different.
Well, yeah. So that's kind of where I started with Vision. And so as you get here and you start realizing that PRI is, I mean, there's so much you can do with PRI, and then you start seeing patients that even PRI stuff doesn't work with. Right? Which is, you say, man, this shouldn't be that hard.
Right.
And you go, well, there's obviously here, you bring Ron, and he goes, oh, well, they just need to do this magic trick. So you start to realize that there's these other pieces of this puzzle that actually make PRI work better.
Right.
And you don't have to work so hard to do your PRI. And you kind of go, oh, that's kind of fun. So then we had dental patients. And the vision was just growing, and so Heidi was here, and we were seeing PRI vision patients, and that was kind of a progression of here, well, we need to do this, and then we need to do that, and it kind of, over the years, it got streamlined and progressed and how we did that. And then we were seeing a lot of patients that were coming from all over, and maybe they came from Minnesota, and they had a splint by a dentist in Minnesota, and they had gotten Paul Coffin orthotics, and they came to see Heidi and Ron, and they got glasses. And then we were trying to fit all these pieces together, and people were still struggling. They weren't getting better as well as we thought they were going to get better.
Right.
And so it turned out that we're like saying, okay, well, if you have a splint and then we get you glasses, now all of a sudden that splint doesn't match the glasses that you have. Or the orthotics that you got before you got the splint now don't match. So that we have all these pieces that just weren't quite fitting right. So people were still struggling, or they'd do well for a while and then things would fall off a bit. So in my opinion, or in my kind of experience, we started figuring out, well, we just have to kind of really streamline that process, make sure all those pieces. So then they'd come in, we'd have to do vision, then we have to go find a dentist and have those splints recalibrated from a dentist. And they said, well, why don't we just do it all at the same time?
Yeah.
So we started, especially for people who didn't have that, or they came from a PT that didn't have a dentist, or didn't have a, right, and they just could recognize that this is an issue.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do, I can't move forward. So, well, we can get all those tools and set up a roadmap of now you have these tools, now you can move forward.
Yeah.
And if you've got a PRI person that kind of understands the progression after that, just getting the tools is just a huge step forward.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing too is like this is especially important for people that have been trying PRI for a long time. They've done techniques for 2+ years and they're not noticing those changes.
And you've heard probably Lori say this in classes, and we say it with our patients, like you should be in a good position. And for Lori to go through, she's good. She goes 3 visits. Like I say, 4 to 6.
I agree.
Right? If you're not staying neutral, seeing progress in 4 to 6 visits, there's no sense in
something else is
pounding
going on.
your head against the wall. So, because the hard part is we see people and I've been doing this AFIR stretch for 2 years,
It's like,
and now my hip is finally neutral, but the rest of me isn't. Well, actually, you know what? Your hip isn't
It's just
actually
patho.
neutral. Now you just created more problems than you actually solved.
yeah. Yeah, and another thing too is people will do this stuff and not wear a good shoe, and it's like, oh, when you're at home and you're trying to do this stuff, just get in a good shoe.
Yeah,
and we have the podcast with Lori on shoes.
and for some people, it's that simple.
Yeah,
right?
For some people, it really is. It's just a new shoe. It's crazy.
Yeah, or get out of a bad shoe.
Yeah.
Right? So it can be that simple, and it doesn't have to go, it has to be this shoe, that. And for some people, it has to be, well, you need go buy the shoe from the shoe store. Don't let them, you got this one, that's what you need.
Yeah.
I don't care what they say, that's the shoe you need.
Yeah.
And people get it, and when we could finally actually show people, so that's one thing that we have that's different here. When I first got here is, well, we have a whole bunch of shoes.
Oh,
So,
here.
okay, yeah, so okay, walk, and you
Yeah.
can show people, okay, now look, and you see these videos all the time, and it's so powerful to say, okay, I'm not gonna do anything else, just put the shoe on.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I'll do that with my own shoe sometimes.
Remember those 4 exercises that we had to do to get you to
Yep.
for that hip to drop? Okay, now we just did all those 4 exercises by walking up and down the hall. Okay,
Right.
now we can move forward.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like a step of progression that people
Yeah.
don't always think is that important because they're like, oh, it's just a sneaker, it's not that big of a deal. But it actually is a huge deal.
Yeah, for figuring out where you're at on planet Earth. I tell people,
Yeah.
the first thing we gotta do is get you back on planet Earth. If you're
Yeah.
not on planet Earth, we got no place to start with.
Right. And then here at Prime, you're seeing people from all over, not just the U.S., but also other countries. So tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about how that process works. I actually will talk after, but I did send 2 patients to you.
Yeah, I think
They're coming in soon. Yeah.
I think I
So
saw
we'll
your-
talk
I saw
about
your-
it.
We'll,
But
we'll chat later.
Yeah.
It'll be fun. It's either a lot easier or a lot harder. Because
Yeah.
sometimes the hardest patients to treat are the ones that have been doing PRI for 2 years.
yeah.
And they come in and they say, okay, well, so what? I have this now. I have these glasses and this splint. That are tools. They're not treatment. They're tools.
Right.
But I'm going to go back and keep doing the same thing I was always doing.
It's
Say,
like
well,
a lifestyle change.
yeah, now we have to actually kind of change the whole way you think about what you're doing with PRI. Not really, but kind of.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people that aren't thinking integration-wise or don't have those tools, they're really still in kind of a biomechanical PRI world,
Mindset.
which is how PRI is taught. It
Yeah.
has to be taught because we're teaching to people who have biomechanics backgrounds.
Yeah.
But as you know, PRI is not really a biomechanical issue.
Sense.
The pelvis is forward, but it's not just that the pelvis is forward. It's the neurological tension that's created that puts
Yeah.
the pelvis forward. So it's all neurological in nature.
Yeah.
So if we have 2 years of this, have this 2 years of this biomechanical, like, I got to get my pelvis in the right spot thought, and always says, all I got to do is just feel your teeth.
Yeah.
It's kind of a mind shift.
Yeah,
So when I get somebody
yeah.
that's maybe we've done a telehealth with, or they've done telehealth with maybe you or with
Sure.
Casey or with Neil or all these people that are PRI people that are doing, they say, you know what, you should just go to Nebraska because you got an eye thing and you got your teeth are a thing and you just need all the tools, just go.
Yeah.
And they don't really have a bias and they're
Yeah.
kind of a blank slate to work with. It's a lot easier.
Yeah. And let's break down a little bit what we're doing with the vision and what we're doing with dental.
Sure.
So people have an idea because we're talking integration and this is integration.
Yeah.
So people know.
Just to bring back what Prime
Yeah.
is. So Prime just said we're going to take primarily these 3 big pieces, your feet and your shoes, where
Yeah.
you're on planet Earth, how your head fits on top of your neck,
Mm-hmm.
which is your occlusion, and how you position yourself in space around you, which is your vision.
Yeah.
And say, well, those 3 systems need to kind of match each other. And if they all match each other, well, then now we're ready to
go.
roll, right? So Prime said, okay, we're going to do that. We're just going to take control, be control freaks, and not be nice people and say, well, that's okay, just do that and do this. And
Yeah.
your dentist can do this and your guy. And we still have to do that with some people.
Sure. And when people come here, so they're ultimately leaving with the things that they need
Right.
to work, like you said before, they're tools, they're not the treatment. So
Yeah.
now you're at a different starting point. Like someone's starting point might be just they need a new pair of shoes. Somebody else's starting point might be that they also need a dental splint, and somebody else might be that they need all 3
They need
things.
the whole shebang.
Right.
Yeah.
And it just depends on the person,
Yeah.
their history, their lifestyle.
And what they've done and
Yeah.
what kind of information they need to get
Yeah.
to get in a position. I tell people, because if you were going to go somewhere for a week and figure out you'd want to know, well, what am I getting out of this?
Sure.
Right? I'm going to spend some money. I'm going to stay in a hotel. I'm flying out there. I'm
Yeah.
spending this money. What are we getting for this? And that's what it is. We're getting you to the starting line of your rehab,
Mm-hmm.
which is, can I get in a neutral state and stay in a neutral state? And once
Right.
you're there, that's when you can start to rehab.
Yes.
And people work so hard to get to the starting line.
Especially now with society and the way society
Right.
is.
Yeah.
I feel like it's even hard. It's probably, I'm sure you see different cases now than you did 15 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
sure.
Yeah, and it's the good thing. The bad thing is as people are kind of getting on this neurological component, partly because we're seeing a lot more neurological symptoms.
Yeah.
It's not just chronic back pain and TMJ and migraine headaches anymore. Now it's POTS and dysautonomia, and it's heart palpitations, and it's
Ehlers-Danlos. They all go together.
Yeah, unexplained seizures, and it's
Yeah.
dystonia. It's weird stuff now, right? Not really weird, but it's weird stuff.
It's like wired in with everything else, and that's like a true neurological. Like they came to you before maybe for back pain, which was still neurologically based, but now they're having neurological.
So it kind of almost makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah, to what you're treating.
It's the same treatment.
It's the same. Yeah.
Yeah. So those three kind of big puzzle pieces, and of course there's other puzzle pieces, as you know, that sometimes we have to kind of integrate with, whether it's hearing or nutrition is a big one, or we'll talk later as we get going.
For sure.
Mental health issues and those kinds of things that play a role in these things for some people and not for others. But the three big pieces, and shoes is kind of an easy one, and feet is kind of an easy one. But as we start, if we're building the foundation from the ground up and it's not really affecting change the way we should, right? Again, some people, hey, you just get the foundation set and everything falls into line. Same thing with working on a pelvis. Well, you get the pelvis in a good spot, and the rib cage and the thorax and the neck and the head just fall into line. Those are so easy. We love
so nice people. When it just works out like that.
Yeah, but a lot of times it doesn't, right? And so then you have to start working from the top down. And then what I find is all that work you did on the foundation, sometimes you were working too hard on the foundation.
Yeah, interesting.
So then we got to go back up and say, okay, we're going to time out, blank slate, let's pull those orthotics out for a second. Let's just get you in a good pair of shoes, and let's start building from the top down, which is the house analogy things we use kind of fall apart in that direction. And that's where we're figuring out where you're at in space visually and figuring out how your head and neck relate to each other, come into a huge, because that's really what's driving the show.
Yeah.
Right? The bottom isn't driving the show, that the top down is what's driving the system.
Do you think you see more top-down driven people at Prime? I mean, I would assume.
The reason they're there is because they're top-down driven.
Right, because the bottom-up driven, most clinicians can handle.
And often even those people, hey, you just get them on a good traditional PT program.
And they're okay.
They'll do fine. Like, PT's not a bad profession. They do great things, but
not for someone who's top-down driven.
Right, for certain things that just don't have that. It's the same thing with, hey, I know myokin and pelvis great, and I just do excellent work with it. I'm sure for a lot of people you're going to do fine.
Yeah.
But there's a percentage that just don't. And that's what we see. So those two big pieces, the dental piece and the vision piece, really are looking at your neck and then just your overall orientation of where are you, which is the big thing. So to break that down a little bit, dental is really, and my 2-minute speech to patients are,
that's perfect.
Are the way your teeth fit and the way that they feel, right, when they fit, is one sense that your brain uses mechanically. So we can talk mechanics if you want to talk mechanically, the way they fit, positions your jaw socket, and so we can talk mechanics if you want to. It's a deal, right? Because you got people have weird bites, and that mechanically is affecting them. Or the way that they feel when they fit is what your brain is figuring out where your head is in relationship to the rest of your body or the rest of your neck.
I think the dental part too is kind of hard for dentists to grasp, but it's also very hard for
because they're
people
dentists
to grasp. Like they just think like, oh, how does my teeth affect my posture? I get that question a lot.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, how your brain understands how they feel together is going to affect you.
And you can dive as deep as you want to dive, but those ligaments and the nerve endings of that system are so highly sensitive, right? If you stepped on a grain of sand, you wouldn't know it. But if you had a grain of sand in your food, you're going to know it in a heartbeat.
That's a really good analogy.
So,
I never thought about it like that.
If just that little bit of issue is going to bother you, okay, well, we know that that system is really highly tuned. So you can have people with good bites. From a dentist perspective, their teeth fit fine, right? They're not malocclused, they don't have cross bites, everything touches. But the way they fit and the way they feel is associated with a bad postural position.
Right.
So I have those people. They've been through braces. They got perfect teeth.
Yeah.
And a crappy neck.
Interesting.
Or a crappy
Something
head,
that doesn't say neutral.
Right. And you say, man, your teeth are perfect, but they're in the wrong position. Because your body's in the wrong position, right? Those are actually the hard ones to treat.
Yeah.
I can have people with bad teeth that match a bad neck. Well, that kind of makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm missing 2 teeth, and I have this one that interlocks here, and we take them away, and hey, everything moves better. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And you can have people with bad teeth from a dentist perspective that matches a good body. So you have people that have malocclusions and cross bites, and that bad bite is good for their body.
I've seen that too.
Right? So why would
That's
why would I address that?
Right.
I'm not a dentist.
It's not causing issues, then it's
Right,
not causing issues.
So I'm not going to deal with that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Right? Or a good bite with a good neck. Well, that would be ultimate goal, right, for all of us. So the issue is that I'm not a dentist. I'm not treating the bite. I just want to know, how is that bite impacting how you hold your body, how you hold your head on your neck.
Right.
And if there's an influence, well, then we should address that.
Yeah.
And so the splints initially, now, if you've been to courses or whatever,
Yeah.
people start with tongue depressed. We'll just stick something in there.
Like a popsicle stick.
Popsicle stick,
Yeah.
or we use little dental appliances,
Yeah.
or little over-the-counter things, and then,
Yeah.
hey, walk around. Does that change anything? Oh yeah, I feel heavier. I feel lighter. Well, my neck moves free. Okay, well, I know there's an impact, right?
Yeah.
That was just an eraser. We erased any impact that the way that they fit and the way they feel have on what your brain is trying to figure out. Now it's relying on other systems.
Yeah.
Well, namely your feet and your eyes. We'll get there. So we erase that input, and things change. Okay, we know we got to do something about that.
Yeah.
Now the specific splints that the dentist will use are erasers. So if you just got a flat plane splint, that's an eraser.
Right.
Which some people just need an eraser. That's fine.
Yeah.
But once we start to then actually calibrate it and put guidance rails on it and bumpers in certain spots so you can feel certain things when you move certain directions, now we're kind of guiding you. So we're not just erasing your old pattern.
Giving you a new
We're
one.
giving you a new
Yeah.
sense of, hey, well, here's where you actually should be.
Right.
When you go to the right, you feel this. When you go to the left, you feel this. Right. So we're erasing the old pattern. We're giving you guidance for the new pattern.
It could be so powerful.
Right. And
too.
it's amazing. Now, if we don't know where you're supposed to be when you give those guidance, because your brain still thinks you need to be over on your right leg, we can give you a great appliance, but your brain still thinks you need to be on your right side. So then we have this tug of war now between what your eyes are telling you where you should be and where we're trying to position your neck with this appliance. So that can lead to problems.
Yeah. Yeah, so now let's kind of go into the vision
Which takes you
aspect.
to your vision, right?
Yeah, because vision is something that I think with dental, because there's an occlusion course,
Yeah.
people
can kind of get it.
Can get it more.
And dentists can kind of
It's-
get on board when you can just show a dentist, hey, just when they
A
feel
neck.
this, just watch this. And they go,
yeah. Oh, they love it.
I can do that? Like,
Yeah.
they don't know it.
No, I don't
because
think
they
they
haven't been taught
realize.
it. I tell people, dentists care about your teeth. Good dentists care about your teeth.
Yeah.
Because that's their job,
Yeah.
right? They want your teeth to be happy. They want you to grind them down, and they want to make sure they're in the right spot, and your roots are good. Really good dentists care about your jaw joints, because for whatever reason they decide they like jaw joints.
Yeah.
Right? And if you have a super excellent dentist, they actually understand that you have a neck associated with your jaw.
Yeah, and
But-
it's like not even just the neck, because when you're changing someone's bite, you could change how they feel at the pelvis.
Right, but the dentists don't even, I mean,
No, it's a hard conversation.
even the dentists that we work with, they get it, but they don't really.
Yeah.
But if you can talk to a dentist about a neck, because that at least makes some sense,
Yeah.
and they actually did dissections of neck muscles because they did all this stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, I can impact a neck. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then when they kind of start to be, well, that has an impact on the rest of the body. They go,
Yeah.
oh, now I'm in.
Because it makes sense. And when you see it,
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing, like the biggest seller for even just patients, but is to actually see the change.
Yeah, for patients too.
Yeah, for patients, but also for clinicians that you might want to work with.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's go into vision, because
Yeah.
vision is where I'm fascinated.
Yeah.
Too.
To figure out where that lives. So your visual system is really cool, and that's something that I've got interested in when I first started. Again, partly because PRI Vision was growing when I first got
Yeah.
here, so it was like, well, you have time, go over and hang out with
Yeah.
Ron and Heidi and see what they're doing. And it was like magic shows all day
bet.
long, and it was,
Yeah.
like, what? How is this working? But the eyeball is really just a chunk of your brain that's sitting there that you have access to.
Right.
And so when you start thinking about vision not as a clarity thing, I mean, that's its tool, right? But why do we need to see clearly? Well, we need to see clearly because we have little words that we have to read on phones,
Yeah.
but for most of humanity, we didn't need clarity of vision.
Right.
There's no point to clarity of vision.
Right.
Yeah, do I need to see all the leaves on the tree? No, do you know there's a tree there? Yeah.
You just need to see if there's a tiger over there coming
Yeah.
at you. That's it.
Yeah. What you need movement and you need space. Where am I at compared to that? What's moving around me?
Yeah.
You know, those kinds of things. And that processing of space and of movement and of shape is all that ambient processing. It's all tied to your proprioception of where am I at. And that's the information that our brain really wants for posture.
Yeah.
Now, once we start to have to focus on things, it's like, okay, there's movement. Now, was it a tiger or was it just the wind, right? That's when you focus in, and as you start to focus on what that actually was, that would be a sympathetic response. That would be am I going to have to run? Am I going to have to fight this, or am I cool?
Yeah.
Right? And then for a moment, okay, I'm cool.
Yeah.
And then you go back to where am I at, right? So for most of humanity, we lived in a world that was 90% or more ambient processing and a little bit of focal vision every now and then. And now we live in a world that's 99% focal processing or more, and we never really care about where we're at because we're 100% of the time focused on a little teeny screen or little teeny words. And so that sympathetic activity is going really high. And we've decided that we need to see really clearly. So you can have 7 or 8 different surgeries to see really clearly. Like we got a place in Omaha, they're proud. We have 8 different ways.
What, like LASIK and
LASIK, RK, whatever. I don't know.
All that stuff.
So if one doesn't work, we got the surgery for you. We can get you to see as clear as you possibly can.
A lot of optometrists don't even agree with LASIK. There's a lot of articles recently about LASIK that came out.
Thank God.
I did see in the New York Post came out with one.
Because what they're finding is, okay, these people had LASIK and now they're coming to my office and they can't see.
Or that they're having like severe dry eyes, which is very uncomfortable.
Yeah, they have problems from it. That's the old surgeries. Now the new ones.
Yeah, sure.
They're better.
I don't know about that.
I don't either. And certainly for the right person and the right reason, I'm not opposed to it.
Oh, I am.
But I put big caveats at the very beginning. For the right person and the right reason, I'm not right.
Elective surgery to me is not.
For most people,
point.
what's the point? It's vanity or convenience,
it's convenience,
which is,
for sure.
I mean, whatever. But even the optometrists, their job is to help people see clearly.
Yeah.
Right? You don't go to the eye doctor and say, "Hey, doc, I see too well."
Yeah.
Right? You go, "Things are getting blurry. I can't see my phone as well as I used to be able to see. I can't read the stop signs as well as I used to be." And so their job is to create clarity.
Yeah.
Which, on top of a patterned brain that says, I want clarity more on one side than on the other, and I want to use that system to position me in a certain position, we start to use that focal vision now to reinforce a pattern of, well, I'm just going to lock in this position.
Right, and I think that's a hard thing to grasp with vision, is that sometimes when it's not the right prescription for the person, it's just pulling them over more to the pattern that they're dominant in.
Right.
And so that's why we want to make a change, if they need that, to help them lateralize to the other direction.
Or figure out where they're supposed to be normally.
Yeah, find their norm.
Yeah. So anyway, we have this profession, and their job is to get people to see clearly, which, again, in our world, if you can't see clearly, it doesn't help you. So if you can't see clearly and you're straining to see, you're creating more tension than we want. So clarity is an important thing, right? We have to be able to see clear because we live in a world. We can't go, well, I could move to Africa and go live in the bush and not worry about it.
Well, and just look out in the distance all the time. And
and not have to worry about it. But unfortunately, we don't have that luxury for most of our days. So clarity is an important aspect of it. But when that's the goal, sometimes we sacrifice good things to get to that goal. So a lot of people, and particularly as we kind of move through things, what we find is people are seeing too clearly. And they're overcorrected.
Yeah.
And they're overfocal, and they're not only in their habits but in their prescriptions.
Right.
And so what we try to do once we get somebody into a neutral state with whatever tools we need to get them there.
Sure.
So let's back up a little bit. We used to really say, well, and we can do cool things. We can shift people's where they're at with prisms and with all kinds of things, and we can force prescriptions on people and say, well, if you put this pair of glasses on, it's going to do this, and it does. But if they can't process that and match it with other things, or they work too hard to see in that position, I think we start to see people that are struggling to really learn the things that we're doing.
Right.
So over time, we've kind of tried to figure out, well, how do we help kind of meld this ability to need to see with the ability to how to help them position themselves better. So instead of the vision being the first thing that we look at, which is kind of where we started, PRI vision started things.
Yeah.
We said, we need to match these pieces to this vision thing. We said, okay, well, actually, once we get the other pieces in place, now we have to figure out how do we make sure that person in that state can actually see well enough, but have the right awareness of where they're at in space.
Yeah,
and so vision now becomes, how do we minimize focal demand, either because I have to work too hard to see, or because things are so clear I'm living in a 4K, 8K world, which is very sympathetic, right? And I've got so many stories of people that had LASIK surgery or whatever, and now they can see 2013, 2010, right? I don't have problems with vision. I can see well. Well, actually, the problem is that
you can see so well.
You see too well.
Yeah.
Right? We have to take it away, and then we give them 20/20 vision, and they're like pissed because they can't see
as
they can
well,
only see 20/20.
But functionally, their body likes it better.
But all of a sudden, they're more relaxed, and we can see those darn hamstrings let go again, and then things move, and they're like, oh, well, I guess I move it, but I don't know if I like this. Because we've been so programmed, I just need to, so
but
we
then
have
that's
this
that
angst.
sympathetic, psychological sympathetic drive
Yeah.
that people just want to hang on to
I
and
know,
live in.
it's hard to get rid of that, and again, that's a life, and that's where people can say, it's not about just getting your pelvis stuck. If you can just let go,
Yeah.
I can just put these on and go outside and go for a walk. That's your 90-90 balloon. And
Yeah.
you go, what do you mean? Remember you did that every day for 3 years to get
Yeah.
yourself neutral, and now, I don't care if you do that ever again in your life.
Yeah.
You can. I don't have a problem with it.
But you could also just put these on.
Put these on, go for a walk.
Yeah.
All right, and you're ready to roll. Well, now let's move forward with things. So reducing focal demand is the first one. And then we still can kind of manipulate space. We can make things seem like they're different, but without necessarily shoving people
Into different
position with a prism and says, hey, we're gonna shift your whole world 6 inches to
Yeah.
the side. So you think you're over there, we're tricking you. Because
Yeah.
brains get good at that stuff. They go, that was a good try.
Interesting.
So a lot of massive prism use, especially early on, we found we had a short window, like 3 months.
To wear them,
Yeah, because in 3 months, your brain's going to figure this out.
and
So
then you
it's-
take them off.
Yeah, and then so if you've had this prism for 3 months or 6 months for some people, man, at that point, if you haven't learned something, the prisms are no longer doing you any good. Your brain's adapted to that.
That's interesting.
that
So
reference.
basically, if you're in that prism for more than 3 months,
Unless you have an actual eye alignment issue,
Sure,
right?
unless there's
which is
a
which is a
strabismus or
problem,
something.
right? And that's a whole other story.
Right,
But if
but-
you're just a normal human and we just put prisms on you to shift you over on your left leg, or to tip the ground at you so you feel like you're walking up a hill,
Yeah.
which we still will do,
sure.
but it's a short term. That's the kind of the icing on the cake now, not the treatment.
So then you come back, and then you can kind of rearrange their techniques, and then take them out of a prism.
Yeah, the goal is to get away from all that stuff.
Sure. Right. Well, same with the orthotic.
Same with the orthotic, same with the foot. You know,
I wore them for like 6 to 8 months, and now if I wear them, I get back pain. I can't wear them anymore.
Yeah.
Because I've grown.
You don't need them.
I don't need them.
Yeah, they're actually restricting.
Yeah, they stop me from moving.
Biomechanically, you probably needed it at some point.
I did at one point.
Neurologically, you don't. Neurologically, you need to be able to move.
Right.
So once you're to the neuro part, well, just move.
So that kind of, if you attribute it to the same thing as the feet, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah. So what we do now is, again, reduce focal demand, and then we use lenses really to create space around people.
Okay. Like pluses, right? I've read
plus
about
and,
that.
plus and minus. So minus lens, the lens that helps you see distance,
Mm-hmm.
typically, creates space that's smaller.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were looking through you look through my glasses, if you hold them out in front of you, but look out, I'm kind of blind. But,
Yeah, I
but
see that.
everything gets small,
Yeah. Everything does get small.
right?
So we're kind of blind.
I'm pretty blind. No LASIK though. Things get small.
Yeah.
Now, plus lenses, old people know that plus lenses make the menu bigger so you can actually read it.
Right.
Right? So less minus is more plus.
Right.
So we don't have to necessarily go, I have to give you reading glasses and you have to walk around all day and have everything. But if we can make space bigger on maybe one side or space smaller on one side, we can start to kind of change the way you orient yourself based on actually just the way space sees around you.
So would that be better to do sometimes than a prism, just because that's not actually forcing somebody
Yeah.
to move over?
It's
You're
just
still
like, hey, I don't know what's going on, but I just can tell I'm on my left leg a little bit easier. I don't have to work hard to get over here because your brain now thinks that the world is actually a little bit bigger on your left side than on your right side. And when you start digging into eye prescriptions, we see a lot of people that their prescriptions that the optometrist gives them, or that, okay, how about this? The patient asks for when they go to the optometrist.
Sure.
Which one's better, one or two? Which one do you like?
Yeah.
So the patients tell the optometrist what they want.
Sure.
And they want more space on their right side and more focal demand on their left side so they can orient themselves off to the left side.
And that's what you're saying, that's what like patients would typically want,
Yeah.
because their pattern is orienting.
And that's what
them
we'll
that way.
see. We'll see more
Yeah.
minus correction in the left eye
Sure.
compared to a right eye because
Yeah.
they want it, because they want actually space over here. So they don't
Sure.
really like the clarity as much on this side. They do, but they
just-
don't. Right? But that's what they ask the doc. Docs, oh, no, I actually prefer this.
Yeah, interesting.
And just by kind of tweaking that a little bit, and I know this is something that Jason will do, is well, I'm just going to switch that. I'm just going to give you a little plus here, a little minus here.
So how do optometrists, well, I know here you have an optometrist that is open
It's
to,
the exact same
working.
scenario with the dentist.
yeah, it just
We
takes
have
time.
we've again moved away from we have to force a prescription on you. Like, you need this because this is what's going to be good for you.
Right.
Which, no, there's some people that we have to say, you know what? You need this.
Yeah.
Same thing with shoes. Hey, we got you in a good state. We put a stick between your mouth. We got you in a good pair of shoes. You test out pretty neutral, as long as I don't have your glasses on, right? So now we're just going to start from scratch. What do you need to see well? And then how can we make sure we orient space around you so you can balance on your left side as well. You can balance on your right side,
Right.
and maybe bias you a little bit left so you make it a little bit easier.
Just because we're already biased so far to the right.
Yeah, so we
And
can do that.
like to clarify that for people listening, we're human, so we're all biased to the right.
Right.
Regardless of who you are, what you do, some people are going to be more biased than others because of history.
And what you've done to yourself, right? Yeah. So that inherent,
injuries.
and that's, again, just to really, really back up, that's the beauty of PRI, is that it gives you a framework to explain. It doesn't matter what people show up in front of you with, whether it's back pain or knee pain or dizziness or whatever. It just gives you a worldview or a framework to say, well, here's how it should work, and here's where you're at, and well, that explains why your brain has decided to do this. And
that's what I love about PRI.
Yeah,
is that you could just
go,
oh, okay,
this
is the next.
I tell people I care a lot about your symptoms, but I really don't.
Sure. I get that.
Right.
I have another, I guess this is a more combined question, vision and dental. Sometimes you can have somebody refracted with a guard in if they've already had their guard made, or like you just said, with a stick in. Now when you talk to sometimes an optometrist about that, they'll kind of be confused as to why, because you're not going to be wearing your guard all day. You're not wearing a stick all day. Yeah. But can you explain that?
Yeah, so it goes back to trying to match those inputs up. I want the visual input to match the position of the neck.
Yeah.
And if by putting a stick in your mouth allows you to orient your neck so you actually can accept space on your left side, just by doing the optometrist doesn't even have to know what the heck he's doing.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you actually don't need as much correction on that eye anymore.
Yeah, because it changes how your neck is sitting.
Right, and it's not that you don't need more correction, but I actually kind of like space on that left side now.
Right, okay.
And they'll give you a better prescription. I know the first thing we do, and with the optometrists we work with, is get them neutral, and I say, okay, Steve, just refract their eyes standing up with the lights on.
Why lights on?
Because that's how you live your life.
Ah.
Yeah. I don't live my life with my neck in a little thing with a dark room with bright light shining on me, right? That's a whole different neurological input for where I'm at. Where if the lights are on around me, I know where space is at around me. If it's dark, I don't know where I'm at in the room. I'm gonna have to focus on something so I can figure out where I'm at.
And I guess talk a little bit about standing refraction and then also standing adjustments when it comes to dental. Both of those things with PRI we're taught to do. Yeah, they're really important.
Yeah, so. and that goes back to matching the third piece, which is, are you on planet Earth?
Yeah.
Right. So if you're laying on your back and we get everybody lined up, but then you stand up on planet Earth and you don't know how to manage where you're at when you get upright. Now, again, we've got a mismatch. Well, what's going to win? Well, the old pattern's going to win just about every time, even if you have the right tools. So once we've got things figured out for dentally in a chair, the last step is, okay, well, let's make sure we get you on your feet. Is it the same?
Yeah.
And often there's a little bit of a tweak.
Sure.
Well, that one tooth is hitting a little bit heavy now. Okay, well, we tweak that because I want you to feel good standing up.
Right. Especially if you're going to wear the guard too.
For activity.
For upright
which is what we're going to use it for, not just for, it is an anti-grind device, or could be.
I've noticed that people, when they do get an appliance that is fitted well for them, they don't grind as much.
Yeah, well, the reason people grind, I think, my opinion, there's lots of reasons why people grind.
Sure.
One reason why people grind is because they're trying to figure out how to get their head and neck in the right position.
Yeah.
And the teeth are in the way.
Yeah.
So they're trying to figure out, if I could just move that darn tooth out of the way, I can at least get my head where it belongs.
Yeah.
And when you close your eyes and you're not on planet Earth, the only sense you have about where you're at is your teeth.
Right.
And so your brain's trying to figure out, well, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Right, if I could just go over, and once you give them an appliance that says, actually, here's where you're supposed to be, they go, oh, thank goodness, I don't need to clench anymore.
Right, and then you go and get them refracted with that appliance, and now you're going to get a more true reading.
Yeah, and oftentimes the optometrists say, well, it didn't change that much. There was a little less astigmatism on the one eye, and that could just be because whatever. And well, it could be.
But that change could be significant.
Could be significant for that person.
Yeah, because 0.25 can be significant.
It can be huge for some people.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of little tweak we'll make, and the patient won't even notice it.
Right.
Right? We'll say, can you tell that that's different? No.
Right.
Visually, they can't.
But the body.
But the body can tell it.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
And they can feel it. And going back to the refraction we do standing up, and Steve's bias isn't, hey, how can I get them to see as clear as possible?
Yeah.
His bias, when he works with us, is how can I take away as much of that refractive power as possible? His mindset is now biased towards, I don't want to give you more power to see well. Because people will take more. You say, which one do you like? Well, I like that one better. Well, can you actually see better with it? Because people actually, I like it better, but then you ask them to read more letters. They can't actually read more letters.
Right.
But they like it better.
Because it's sharper.
Yeah. The contrast is higher, and it's, right, so it looks better.
Sure.
But then what functionally do they actually need it? Does it actually help them? From a clarity perspective, and it doesn't.
Right.
And I would say 90% of the people we see, if we just get them in a neutral state, put something between their teeth, turn the lights on, stand up and say, hey, let's refract, we're going to be able to take away some prescriptive power on probably 90% of people.
Yeah. And you're doing the refraction in left stance or just standing?
Well, I start just standing.
Yeah.
Nothing fancy, right?
Yeah.
And let's just see what happens.
Yeah.
Right? And then often we go, okay, well, they do pretty good, but they still can stand center on their right side or stand on their right leg better than their left leg. Okay, well, now let's do this. Okay, let's go over, back over, stand on your left leg.
Properly.
Put your left hand out in front of you.
Yeah.
Right? Be in a biased state. And now let's recheck your eyes. And now I don't have to do anything. The eye doctor takes over and says, oh, actually, they'll take more space on the left side now. Or they need a little more clarity on the right side now because we've got them in a different perspective. And then now...
It's like a shortcut to prisms.
Yeah.
Because you can actually just get the...
And so then now they have a prescription that they can see well with.
Right.
That also works well with their body. So now they can wear that pair of glasses, not for a 20-minute time frame, hopefully over the next 2 to 3 months and learn something, right?
Right.
The clock starts ticking. Now it's like, hey,
these are yours.
these are your glasses. Put them on.
Yeah, wear
all
them.
day long.
Yeah.
There we go. Now, some people still need some prisms because
Sure.
sometimes that's not quite enough and they still want to extend and they don't know how to get their body relaxed. And we can still use some of those tricks to kind of force people if they don't respond naturally. Like I said, that's the icing on the cake at the end of the thing, not the, hey, you got back pain, I'm going to throw a big prism on you and see if we can get your back to shut off. Which will work, but just won't last.
Right, okay, because the brain will kind of outdo it.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay. I never even looked at it in this perspective, which is why I wanted to have you on here to ask you these questions.
So it doesn't have to be hard, but again, you have to have an eye doctor that's willing to talk to you.
Or open-minded, yeah.
Who's open-minded. And really, it's very challenging to send somebody to an eye doctor and say, hey, would you just tell your eye doctor to stand up and not overcorrect you?
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean not overcorrect? I don't overcorrect anybody. Well,
right.
That's not what I mean, right. It's a
hard
conversation.
Because the body wants that overcorrection too. So it's like they're just giving you what the body is looking for.
And a lot of optometry offices, there's, you go to, it's a small room, they're bouncing the light off of a mirror, and so they can't stand up because it has to be in this spot because that's the only way the room is fit because they're in a small office, and it's all on a computer. They don't have like lenses they can move around. They just have to type it in the computer and the little thing automatically switches, and it's, I think it's a great job. Like, you just sit there and there's more to it.
Sure.
You like that one? All right, try that one. I like that one. You like, and
there's a difference, I think, from what I've seen with regular optometrists and neuro-optometrists. Mm-hmm. Like, for me, neuro-optometrists are way more open-minded, and they want to work. Well, if you find one open-minded, they want to work with you.
Yeah, that's the trick, just like dentists. They at least understand that there's a connection between what you're doing with your vision and your posture.
Oh, yeah, they
totally get that,
They
right?
get it, yeah.
Some optometrists get that.
Yeah.
Some. It depends on how old they are and what they've kind of been exposed to.
Makes a difference.
The neuro-optometrists, because they've gone to extra schooling to kind of get
that.
The ophthalmologists are into eye health.
Okay.
Right? And they care about, is the eyeball healthy? Do you have cataracts? And they'll give you refractions. When people see ophthalmologists, who are medical doctors who happen to specialize in eyeballs, not necessarily vision. They specialize in eyeballs.
Or like sight.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a difference.
It's a whole different.
And
so they don't get it at all.
Right.
They don't even believe in vision therapy. Most of them.
Oh,
not
really?
all of them, right? Because
that's one thing I think neurooptometry is doing so good with. They have, vision therapy, and for the people who need it, it's vital.
Yeah.
It could help with TBIs.
No. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
It's huge.
For the people who actually have vision issues.
Yes.
Now, we have people that don't have vision issues, but we have to use their vision as a tool.
Right.
Right.
I think that's a really good comment.
Yeah.
Because our people, a lot of times that are coming to us, you're right. There's no
they don't have vision issues.
An issue.
Like they've got no dental issues.
Right.
I got perfect teeth. I have perfect eyes. I see 20/13, and I had braces when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. Those aren't a problem for me. Well, actually, they're the biggest problem for you.
Right.
Because they're too good.
Right.
On top of a body that sucks.
Yeah. Because the body is in one position.
Right.
Can't
and it's stuck based on the way your eyes are so good and the way your teeth are so good.
Yeah.
They're holding you in that bad position. So for a neuro-optometrist that's willing to help you is excellent, and it's a timing issue, right? So we'll see these people. I've already done 8 weeks of vision therapy and prisms and whatnot. But that was the one tool, but they didn't have the matching tools underneath.
Like body-wise, you're saying?
Right. So the vision therapy was trying to work too hard to overcorrect something that they couldn't over. The reason that I was lazy was not because the eye was lazy. It was because the brain couldn't figure out how to use it properly because of the rest of the tools weren't in place to actually use the eye well.
Right.
So
that makes sense.
So when Heidi was here and she was doing vision therapy, if she had kids that weren't doing well with vision therapy, she would know they have a body issue. Well, if that kiddo doesn't know how to stand on their left leg, or sit in a position where they can actually turn on their abs and breathe.
Breathe, yeah.
There's no way I'm going to get their visual system to work.
Right.
So
Well, that's, I think,
right?
yeah, I feel like
So
prerequisite to vision therapy should be PRI.
We can flip the coin,
Yeah.
right? So hopefully we have neuro-optometrists can also have the discussion of, hey, I've got a patient that's not doing well with vision therapy. Can we look at that from the bottom up? And
That's
those
so
might be the kids that
interesting.
just need a pair of shoes before they go to BT.
Right. Especially because they're young
Or
kids.
maybe they should do VT standing up rather than sitting in a chair.
Yeah. Wow, interesting.
Right? So just having the conversation. So if you have the biggest issue, can you have somebody that has that conversation? Great. So the optometrist we use here now is just a general optometrist. And I've had more luck talking with general optometrists who are willing to have a conversation because they're not biased.
Right.
So when you have somebody that's got 30 years of neuro-optometry experience, and they've been using their tools in their way for 30 years to try to integrate, some of them will talk to you, a lot of them don't.
Yeah.
Same thing with dentists. The
Yeah.
TMJ cranial specialists, they're excellent, but they're specialists, and they're going to do things their way, and some of them it ruffles their feathers for somebody to say, well, could we just
There's
try
a
something
lot
little different?
with airway right now, too. Like, there's a lot of airway specialists.
Mhm.
And I think, it's great, but it can
Oh,
be
thank
a little...
God there's airway
It
specialists.
could be a little dangerous when we're doing, like, different devices to pull jaws forward, and nobody's looking at what's going on below.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen it.
There's impacts from, so it's the same thing, whether it's tongue tie releases
Yeah.
or, which are important, that's right, and for the right person. And people get tongue tie releases and it comes back.
Right,
Well,
right.
why was it-
Talk
why-
about that a little
Why
bit.
was it tongue tied to begin with?
Right.
Because the muscles around that tongue were so tight to help them hold their head up in a position, not
Yeah.
because they wanted their tongue to be tight.
Right.
So we released the one thing that they were using to hold themselves up with. Some people actually feel worse.
Yeah, well, if you don't do PRI prior, I think.
Right, yeah, so it's just a timing issue.
Timing. Yeah.
And there's people that have tongue ties that do fine, just like there's people that have malocclusions that do fine.
For sure.
It's just not driving them. So just because you see something doesn't mean you have to treat it.
Right. I think that's an experience thing too. Like,
Yeah.
definitely takes time to get there. And it's, as a clinician in my own PRI journey, it takes time to see all this.
To see the pieces of the
Yeah.
puzzle. Yeah.
Because it's hard to fully grasp. It's hard to fully learn. It's hard to even get to the point where you're looking at it from a neurological perspective versus a biomechanical perspective. That takes a long time. So for like people listening, that a lot of people that listen to this podcast are interested in PRI or
Right,
are
have
clinicians
that.
themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why this is a specific episode for people like that.
And it's a hard mentality to get out of. Not that it's a bad mentality, but I just had a conversation yesterday with a guy I saw in Prime 6 months ago, 7 months ago. It's been a while since he's been here. Very strong, highly driven athlete. Tore up his ankles big time.
Okay.
Bad malocclusion and a lazy eye.
And a lazy eye. Oh.
Right.
Well, that kind of makes sense with
So-
ankles too.
Yeah. So yeah, but the issue isn't his lazy eye, but
Yeah.
he's got a lot of visual issues, right?
Sure.
So he's done the vision issues, and we talked, and he's like, you know what? I started doing some breathing exercises. I was like, what do you mean you started doing some breathing exercises? Well, I just started to decide I was going to focus on my breathing.
The ones that you had given him, I'm assuming.
Right. And so remember those ones we did, 6 months? Well, yeah, but I've really been working just on strengthening, and I've been working on, right? He's an athlete. I just want to go lift heavy again. I want to do all these things, and I found if I just exhale more than I inhale, I feel so much better. Why is that? Like, sometimes it gets back to those basic, simple things that are still a piece. Now, without an ability to get out of his bite and get into a pair of shoes that help stabilize his ankles, and a pair of glasses that keep his eyes balanced so one doesn't completely let go, because he's overusing one compared to the other, it's going to be hard for him to actually exhale.
Sure.
And he'd done that before. He'd done PRI before he came to see us. I did all that balloon stuff. I did all those breathing things.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and probably I didn't make a big enough deal about his breathing stuff because he'd done them well, because he needed to work on it, getting his ankles to work and
Other
feeling
stuff.
his teeth and getting his visual system to integrate with that in that neurological world. But the biggest neurological piece was just, hey, can you breathe well?
Yeah. That's an important takeaway too, because sometimes people will jump to the
So just
higher level
because
stuff.
we've got now these fancy tools, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
change really the things you need to
the
do.
basics.
But it makes it easier.
I think after this weekend for me, that was like a huge point nailed in. Was
Yeah.
just the basics are really, really important.
Yeah.
And if you miss out on the basics and you jump,
Yeah.
that could be
What's cool with what, especially PRT, is what you did this weekend, is that realm has so much ability to be creative in what you do with how do I implement these big picture issues? Because when you can stop thinking about it as well, how do I get that pelvis in a spot? How do I get the neurological system to accept that?
Yeah.
So it will happen. There's so many things you can do.
Oh yeah.
And PTs
Clinicians,
who
yeah.
have been trained, and even PRI PTs have been trained
Yeah.
in medical schools and in PT schools that are very biomechanical and very methodical and very, right? And that's the world we live in, orthopedic. It's hard to get out of that mentality.
Yeah. And I think a lot of professions are trained like that, not just...
Which is why even PRI gets taught in a way that's very algorithmic based and very, well, you got to get a hamstring first and then you get an inner thigh. And people say, well, you jump and you just say, well, now what happens if you feel your molar and now you can do all those things? Well, what about that hamstring thing? You got your
It just kind of happens.
it's not the you don't have to go do a hamstring exercise. You are. What do you mean? Well, you're actually standing on your leg.
So you're
normally.
Using your hamstring.
So your hamstring is actually engaged.
Yeah.
Can you feel your butt? Yeah, okay, well, the only way you're feeling your butt is that hamstring's on.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the algorithm. Well, I can't get that glute med unless I got a hamstring and inner thigh in place. Well, are you standing and feeling your butt? Yeah, I feel my butt now.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we got it.
Yeah.
So it makes it easy. So in your world, it's a lot easier to get creative in that. I think some of our my PT colleagues get still stuck in the algorithmic based. And if you met PTs, we're pretty type A personalities. Most of us, I'm not, but most of us are. And that's probably why I gravitate toward PRI. It's hard to get out of that.
Yeah.
Out of that mentality.
Yeah. I think there's a time and place for that sort of algorithm.
But then you go back and say, okay, now I don't have to work so hard.
Yes. And I've seen it firsthand.
I can actually do an upright standing hamstring activity. I don't have to go back and do a 90-90.
Right. Yeah.
You
don't need to regress.
I don't need to go do a protonics exercise, right? Which is just a tool.
Yeah.
Now we can actually functionally get you on your left leg and understand that you have a world on that side.
Yeah, and move through space, alternating, reciprocal, do all those things.
And process the information around you unconsciously.
Yeah.
Without having to think about it.
Sure.
You shouldn't have to think about my left abs every time I take a step.
Right.
And people do. They walk around.
I know, because people take it to an extreme, especially New Yorkers. New Yorkers are like, should I be sitting a certain way on Subway? I'm like, relax, just relax. Yeah. Just take a breath.
People have been PRI. I come to them, you've been PRI'd.
Yeah.
And I know when I get somebody to come in and they're sitting on their left butt cheek and their left shoulders down.
Trying so hard.
How long have you been doing PRI? 3 years.
But I'm trying to do PRI, not properly.
Well, what hurts? Well, everything hurts. Well, why are you sitting like that? Because I'm supposed to, right? Yeah. Not necessarily.
No.
But you could.
Right.
Have you really looked at it? And this is something that, Mike Mullen.
Yes, I talked to him 2 weeks ago on the phone.
And he posted this a while back, and I just love it. Have you seen the PRI handout, the home exercise program thing, the restoring alternation in your life thing? And if you look at the front cover of it, have you looked at it?
I'm sure. I was like a person like walking.
It's Bobby Rappel, who's been here forever, and her husband, and they're walking. And she's got her first of 7 kids on her hip, her right hip, right? And they've got sandals on.
Oh, really?
And Birkenstocks on. Oh, my God.
I actually think Birkenstocks are great.
Yeah. But they're sandals.
Lori told me that about the Birkenstocks.
Yeah, they can be great. Birkenstocks make shoes, too. Did you know this? They're not horrible.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, because I had a patient that was struggling with the PRI shoe, and I asked when I did the podcast with Lori, I asked her about it. She was like, "Get her in a Birkenstock," and I was like, "Oh."
Really? Yeah.
And it helped her.
Yeah.
It was, and then now all I wear is Birkenstocks.
Oh, Lori said it was okay. I can wear Birkenstocks.
That's what.
I'm running with it. Yeah.
Echo and Birkenstocks. These are Echoes.
Yeah, there's
shoes. You just have to know what to look at.
Yeah. And so probably the number one, and I'm sure she told you the number one question she gets is, well, which shoe's for me? Well, it could be any shoe.
It could be a lot. It
doesn't even have to be on the list. Right?
You could just look around.
Whatever gives your brain the sense that you want. But the front cover of that PRI thing it could be like show me all the things wrong with this picture, right? Bobby's got her kid on her right hip, and they're in sandals, and they're holding hands. They're not swinging their arms, and they're staring at each other as they walk. He's holding the dog, and the dog's pulling him, right? Like, why is that the cover of the PRI manual? Well, because that's normal life.
Yeah.
Right? You should be able to go for a walk with your husband.
In a sandal.
Put your kid in a sandal. Put your kid on your right hip. Hold hands, and smile.
If everything is going right in your life, that should be.
That's our goal.
That's the goal.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the goal. The goal isn't wear your PRI shoes and sit like this and feel your left teeth all the time, right?
Yeah.
That's not the goal. But now if you open up the thing, Janie's on the inside. Every picture she's got her good shoes on, and she's showing you all the things to try to get to the point so you can take your shoes off and go for a walk.
Yeah.
And feel good. Like that is the goal.
That
the
makes
goal
sense.
isn't PRI. The goal is get away from PRI.
This is not a long-term situation.
The goal is to go to your eye doctor, and because you feel good, the eye doctor gives you a good prescription that you need that makes you feel good and allows you to see good at the same time.
Right.
And you don't need anything between your teeth.
Yeah.
You can wear whatever the heck shoes you want to wear.
Yeah.
That would be the goal,
I
right?
love
That's
it.
life. That's normal.
Yeah, that's
Now,
life.
some people still need something because they got issues. That's fine. The goal then is to peel away all those things. And I think even for our prime patients, people that we see, that still becomes the hardest part.
Just taking them away.
Taking things away.
Yeah, I bet.
I got an email from a patient of mine and I saw her a while back, and we have some more work to do, but the last thing we had to figure out how to do was to get her to be able to lay in bed without her shoes on.
She's sleeping with them?
Mm-hmm. And as long as she's up in her shoes, she was 100% fine.
Wow.
And she started with big issues.
Sure, I believe it.
And she's doing great. So I do great. So she saw me. She said, appointment to come see me from like Florida. I don't know where she was at the time. She's all over the place. Well, hey, how's it going? Well, I still have to wear my shoes to bed. How can we get out of shoes in bed?
Interesting.
So that was the hardest thing to do, is to get rid of the tool.
That's so interesting.
Well, we had to find another tool that helped her out, and so she got rid of her shoes. And she's doing well.
I can't imagine sleeping with shoes. That sounds so claustrophobic to
Yeah.
me.
But if it gives you keeps you grounded,
gives you
and allows your brain to say, I'm safe, I know where I'm at, when I close my eyes and I don't feel my teeth.
Yeah.
And I have that sense of I know where I'm at in space now because I have these nice, good shoes on
Made
my
her feel
feet.
safe, yeah.
She could sleep, and she was happy.
Wow.
She took them off and closed her eyes, and she'd be in a hot mess.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of goes to show the types of cases that you're getting here at Prime.
Yeah.
You're not getting the typical average case. You're getting people who have been everywhere. Mayo Clinic. You're getting people from everywhere.
And they've seen lots of, I tell people all the time,
Specialists.
you've seen lots and lots of really, really good people.
Yeah.
I don't think there's bad people out there that are,
Yeah.
I mean, there's some bad people out there.
Sure.
Right? But there's good people giving bad advice.
Sure.
Just because they're in their little realm and their little world and they don't know how to branch out. Right? So that dry needling you did wasn't bad. The chiropractic treatment wasn't bad. The vision therapy wasn't bad. The LASIK surgery wasn't bad.
Well, LASIK is on another level in my opinion.
That jaw surgery that they said you needed that you had that made you have perfect teeth, right?
Yeah.
For the right person, for the right reason, it was probably necessary, but unfortunately we did it in the wrong order. It was a timing issue. But people aren't giving you bad treatment. It's a matter of working together and figuring out how do we get all these treatments to work together.
I think that's really important what you just said about working together, because you could get all these great treatments done at an optometry clinic, but then you need that to also communicate with the dentist.
And that's why Prime started. We had
And
great vision stuff.
That's the
great
key.
dental stuff. We had great orthotics. And we still had people our patients that weren't getting better.
Right, and they won't unless there's especially complex cases, unless there's like that crossover.
Yeah. So when it was one piece, they all did fine.
Yeah.
As soon as we had to start to kind of integrate several pieces, then it became more of a challenge, and that's why we have Prime. And that's it. And once we have those pieces, I tell my Prime patients, our goal is to make you work a lot less hard than you had to before you got here.
I mean, that makes sense.
Because a lot of those patients, they've been doing it. As long as I do my peer exercises 3 times a day,
Yeah.
I do okay. I'm managing it.
Yeah.
As long as I sit like this, I feel decent.
Right, but that's not life.
Right, but they can't go for a walk. They can't do anything. But they're managing it, and they got all these great tools to manage it, but they're not actually getting better.
Yeah.
So I don't want you to have to sit like that all the time.
Yeah.
I want you just to be able to be normal.
Sure. Yeah, I get it.
That's the goal.
This has been so interesting because I learned a lot too.
Well, good. I'm glad.
But I have
Hopefully.
2 more questions for you. Where can people find you if they want to work with you and Prime?
Yeah, so Prime, it kind of started its own little entity. Now it kind of just fits underneath the Hruska Clinic kind of realm. It has its own dedicated website, so Prime Engagement with 1 E, so we combine the E, Prime, Prime, Engagement, Prime Engagement.
Which that website is brilliant. There's so much information on that
website.
Good.
I'm glad to hear that.
I think it's awesome.
Because I just spent, that was what I did yesterday afternoon, is I want to update a lot of the content.
I love the stuff on there. Just because that you have a description of each appliance and you have the description of optometry. It's been, I've used it for myself.
Well, good. I'm glad, because I want to update it, because I want it to be better than it currently is.
Even though I think it's great.
Okay, good, which is wonderful. That was pre-pandemic. That was kind of my baby pre-pandemic, was to get that website kind of up and going. So there's lots of good information just on kind of how did you get to this point? Like, so people who are at Prime level, like, how the heck did I even get here?
Yeah.
Right? How did things fall apart so bad? Well, it's just because we have all these different pieces that weren't addressed together. That's really the bottom line.
Yeah.
And it might have been an ankle sprain and a late, what it could have been like my athlete guy. But a lot of times it's just, people just weren't putting the pieces together. And we just got to find, we know what the pieces are. Now we just put them together and we're ready to roll.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of good information on that website. And then the Hruska Clinic website also has some information on it, but usually a lot of the Prime stuff will point to that. So if we have people that have integration needs, we have local patients that maybe just need an appliance or vision, and they don't necessarily go that route. We'll funnel that more through the clinic. I can be reached, I'm on Instagram and...
I didn't even know you were on Instagram.
Yeah.
I'll find you now.
I think I follow you.
Oh, good.
I'm pretty sure.
I have to follow you back.
I'm pretty sure I do.
I'll find you.
Your idea where the clinic does, because the clinic has it.
Hruska Clinic does, because I tagged them.
You know, actually, to be honest with you,
Is that you?
I probably do. Yeah, I run that, so I probably follow more things through that. But I prefer the Hruska Clinic Twitter page rather than my own Twitter page too. So, for what that's worth, like
Ron like sometimes tweets things, and I don't know if it's really Ron, but
no, it's totally wrong. No,
it's so great.
if you can decipher it.
No,
I
could decipher like a quarter of it.
Right, and that's every conversation you have with Ron.
I've seen some
Ron.
things that he's gone on Twitter and has said funny.
Great,
obviously great things, but also one time I saw something he said that was actually like actually comedy.
Like humorous.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is if you actually know what he's talking about, because it'll be a case or a book he read or whatever. And when Twitter started, he was a little obsessive and compulsive because it was 140 characters. Like he had to try to figure out how to get exactly 140 characters. Like, he can't do that. So that's why he loved it, because he can't say hello in under half an hour. So for him to try to create a thought in 140 characters, it was a really good exercise for him. And so I think
get back on it.
So I think he does that a little bit more just to help him kind of get, how do I get this thought into this little concise. I think he's got 280 now, maybe. I don't know.
280 characters.
Yeah, but so it's a little bit not as much of a challenge for him.
That's
But
so funny.
But it's good for, 50-cent words. And so if I've only got 280 characters, I got to throw the big words in. Or the ones that he made up, which is fine. But anyway, social media. The clinic has a website. I can be reached. You can call the clinic, that kind of thing.
Perfect.
We just talked this morning. We do some online consulting,
right,
which can be challenging for patients that are at that level. But some people just need when we can start to say, well, we understand why you have that.
Yeah.
We kind of jokingly said, well, we do some telepsych sorts of things.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is if somebody actually kind of says, you actually understand why I might have these issues, because nobody else, my doctors don't understand.
But it's validating towards people. It's very validating to hear that their twistedness that they've talked to so many people about actually makes sense.
Yeah, and I knew there was something with my eyes. I knew there was, like, that actually makes sense to you? Because I've been telling my eye doctor that there's something wrong with my eyes. And he said, no, you're fine. I think there's something wrong.
Yeah.
Right, so that validation is fine. And that's all run through Prime, primarily because there's legal issues with treating as PTs across state lines.
Oh, I
and this
know.
whole, which is remake is a lot of
nice
so
to not be a PT.
But as a consultant, as somebody that can just sit down and have a conversation with you, I could totally do that. I just can't treat.
Right.
Officially.
Right.
So that's run a lot through Prime. And then we can say, okay, well, we either need to find somebody in your neighborhood. And, there's PRI people all over.
Yeah, especially in the U.S. I think there's like 250 or something.
Even more. I think we're over 300 now, maybe.
Probably. And then there's people that are studying it that maybe don't have all the courses or don't have the certification that are still, they're brilliant.
And sometimes the people reach out to us because they Google whatever and they end up on our site. And that's why I don't know, but I've never even heard of this PRI thing before. And so, and even people that want to come are like, sometimes it's good if you can find somebody local that at least understands your pattern, and even if they're not making progress with you, just have somebody local that can communicate with you is excellent. Some people do and some people don't, and we can work with it either way.
Yeah.
We do some telehealth follow-ups with our Prime patients, and we just kind of, again, manage what kind of activities are you doing, how are your appliances working, and those kinds of things. And it can be valuable. But if we run into those roadblocks, hey, we got to find somebody locally. So we reach out to a lot of people across the country to help us out with the patients, and we know who they are. So we are definitely willing to talk to people. Usually we'll have people send in information before we do a telehealth consultation with them. We'll have them fill out the paperwork, which seems kind of extensive. Yeah, seems kind of extensive. It's like 6 pages or 7 pages.
I think it's good because you have to.
It's not horrible compared to some places where you go and we're kind of being up. And then we like to get pictures of how your teeth fit. And we like to get pictures of what your feet look like. And I kind of want to know what the eye doctor saw when they saw you.
Yeah.
And particularly, are your eyes getting worse? Are they getting better? What's that visual? Is it getting worse? Well, since that car accident, your vision changed or whatever. We can kind of track some of those things. So it gives us lots of little clues that we can look at, and then we can ask questions. So it's a lot easier to have that information before going and say, hey, I'm Joe from wherever, and I don't, because then we spend so much time just getting into those basics. So a lot of times we'll have people, just send us your information and we'll chat about it.
Yeah.
And then the people that don't have the local tools that they can utilize, we bring them in.
Yeah. Amazing.
And they're here for a week and they get the tools they need. And I just want to give you a roadmap. And usually I give people way too many things to think about and way too many things to do.
Well, it's a week, so it's
I said I got 3-4 days to give you 3-4 months worth of things to do.
Yeah.
Like, I don't expect you to do this all today, but once you can do this, you got to be able to do this.
Yeah,
and you
that's
do
hard.
This. And we're kind of hoping we get there.
Yeah.
And sometimes the road takes kind of windy roads, and that's okay. We can kind of recalibrate and come on and figure out where to go. But it's
really, this place is the gold standard.
It's value.
There's really nowhere else in the country that is doing this to this extreme level where it's kind of under one roof and you're able to tackle all these different aspects of integration.
Yeah, it's great. It's so
done
fun.
so well.
It's so fun. And it's just, regardless or not, and it kind of floored me when I moved here is that the clinic and PRI are really separate entities.
Yeah, I was.
Which
like,
even when I
wow.
started working here, like, and that's when PRI was in that building, I was like, oh, like they're separate.
yeah.
They're separate entities, but they're really not, right?
No, they're the same.
So our goal as the clinic is to represent the science of PRI in its
Right.
purest form, right?
Yeah.
Which makes things a lot easier. So I don't do dry needling, and I don't do, right? But I know a guy.
Sure.
No, I don't do cranial work other
Yeah.
than a little bit, but I know a guy,
Yeah.
right? So I don't think those tools are bad. So I don't have to be a one-stop shop for everything,
Right.
which is kind of freeing because I know some people are like, well, what else do you do besides PRI? Well, I don't.
That's what we do.
I don't do anything else but PRI, but people need other things. Yeah, certainly people do need other things.
Yeah.
That's okay. PRI
Kind of
isn't-
like the ultimate
PRI isn't-
middleman.
PRI isn't everything, yeah. But when you have somebody that can manage, that's as that role, and that's again with Prime. Sometimes that's what we're managing. Okay, you
Yeah.
should find a good bodywork person. And
Yeah.
you should find a good personal trainer that
Sure.
understands how to get you back working out again, or whatever
Sure.
whatever that tool may be. And then PRI loves seeing the patients that we see and say, okay, we saw this really interesting patient with this kind of unique dystonia,
Yeah.
but it was related to whatever.
This course.
This course or this thing. And so a lot of the coursework and a lot of the privies that come out, man, we just happen to see this patient and
Okay.
here's why it really sparked this
It's like
conversation. And
constant communication.
yeah, so one kind of drives the other. So it's a really unique,
awesome.
kind of symbiosis relationship, which makes it easy, but also
Well, it's just
fun.
different.
Yeah,
To me,
different,
when first of all, when I came in here the other day, I was like, oh my God, this place is amazing. But also, I know that what you guys are doing at Prime and what the Institute is doing is something that is not being done
Yeah,
anywhere else. Because there's one Ron, and he's
Yeah.
the one who's created it. And so
Yeah.
we're all kind of like honoring what he's created. But a lot of these concepts, which we see be so successful in so many individuals, there's nowhere else that is at this level of doing this.
yeah.
I think there are other hubs in America that are getting
Oh,
there.
absolutely.
But
And
this is like the standard of what everybody wants to be at.
And we all, I mean, I tell people, I don't want to compete with people. Our goal is to help
Yeah,
people.
just to help people, sure.
Right? So if people have questions, they can reach out to us. We're not
Yeah.
want to steal your patient or
Yeah.
you're doing it wrong or whatever.
Well, I think it's great
Right,
to
we
know
s-
that if I can't figure something out, I can send them to you.
Yeah,
That makes me feel great.
Ask questions. I spend a lot of time on email asking
Yeah.
questions or answering questions as much as I can. And sometimes, like, you know what, we just don't
Yeah.
see the person's hard to know. And that's kind of just the community aspect of PRI in the clinic is it's not really, people around here, it's not ego driven.
No,
at
all.
Right? So it's not about.
It's like, it's shockingly not at all.
Yeah,
That's
and
the
that's kind
biggest
of
thing.
that's why it needs to be kind of in Nebraska.
Yeah.
Because that's what Nebraska is all about.
Yeah.
It's Midwest. It's kind of
Low
slow
key.
pace. It's low key. It's no ego, and yet we're doing these. People say, well, why are you going to Nebraska?
Everybody says that.
From Ireland, really? Going to Nebraska? Like, why would you go to
Why not?
Nebraska, right? Well, because right. Well, it was just I think it was a gal who went through PRC, and I can't think of her name. Oh, I'm so mad at
That's
myself.
okay.
And she had been to a Elton John concert with her husband.
Uh-huh.
Like in his last hurrah, and then the next week she was coming to integration, right, and to do her PRC, and she's like, well, this is so much better than Elton John.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
I mean,
It's
this
like-
was a highlight weekend for me.
Right, same thing. It's like those are kind of our PRI geeks that are out there.
Yeah.
Compared to Elton John, right? But it's just because it's just nice to have the energy and we love people coming in because it does kind of energize us to
I'm sure, to keep producing and doing what
and
you're
to keep
doing.
learning, right?
Yeah.
Everybody has this, the passion to want to keep learning and
Yeah.
keep growing and keep doing more stuff. It's real easy to lose.
Yeah. I think the drive has to, it comes from within, but then sometimes you have, a weekend like this for me is so energizing
Yeah.
and so oh, wow, I can't wait to go back and
Yeah.
do what I know to
So
do.
when you see a patient, you go, man, that really did
Yeah.
not make sense to me at all.
Yeah.
It kind of
It's gonna
energizes
make
you
you-
to want to learn more.
Sure.
So having that community around here that's great.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Okay, my last question
Okay.
for you. You're from Colorado, you
Yeah.
were a swimmer, but what do you do now that makes you move your brain or move your body, either at the
Yeah.
same time or
Yeah.
not at the same time? What do you do that you enjoy?
Well, a couple things. I have 5 kids, so I don't really sit around too much. Right? Yeah. Our oldest is 17 and our youngest is 8.
Wow.
So we're in the taxi cab years, so we're driving kids to
Gosh.
practices and that kind of stuff. So they keep my brain kind of going because I can't not.
Yeah.
Right? So when I get home, it's
chaos.
It's chaos and it's moving. Though they're getting to the age now where they're not little kids.
Yeah.
We just had this over Christmas. We didn't have little kid Christmas,
Yeah.
which is, magic and
Sure.
jumping on the bed at 5 a.m. and gifts everywhere. It was
Yeah.
it was big kid Christmas, which was like,
A little
hey, it's
more
10 o'clock. Can you get out of bed now?
mellow,
Right,
yeah.
it's mellow, but it's still cool. So that keeps my brain going. In a non-PT world, I can take the kind of the hard brain work that we do here, because it's brain work. It's thinking and it's time to, I don't see that many patients in a day.
You're right.
It's just wonderful. I love it.
Yeah.
We could dive down that, but
it's important.
but it's hard brain work. But I can go home and I can let go of it. I can not work when I go home.
Yeah.
I can. So that keeps my brain healthy.
I love it.
Not being PRI minded all day long.
Yeah.
I can just go
balance.
Yeah.
Talked about that a lot yesterday.
I can just go
balance.
jump on the trampoline with the kids if I want to,
Sure.
or watch them jump on the trampoline. And then as far as moving my body, I don't swim very much anymore, primarily because it's a pain.
Well, when you do something for years, it
Right?
kind of
Yeah.
is like,
My second oldest is now, he's a freshman in high school, is on the swim team, so it's kind of fun to watch him kind of
cool.
in that realm, and like, oh man, that was so fun, and it's just a fun team environment.
Yeah.
And there's so much good stuff about swimming, and probably bad stuff about swimming, but good stuff
Yeah.
about swimming that I like. But that's a whole other conversation. So I don't swim, but I do work out. I lift weights a couple times a week, just general weightlifting.
Sure.
I'll even bench press every now and then.
Wow.
Right? I'll do some like actual weightlifting stuff. It's
Why
not
not?
bad.
It's not.
But I like something. But what I make sure I do every week is I kickbox 2 or 3 times a week.
oh, nice.
And we have the gym we're at, and there's a kickboxing class, and it's cardio kickboxing, and so there's these little,
Sounds great.
20-year-old bunnies doing this thing, but there's music and rhythm.
It's awesome.
And it's alternating right left, and it's
Crossing midline.
this kind, and it's kick your feet, and then you throw in some whole body movement sorts of things and that kind of stuff, and then I'll go, okay, well, this song I'm going to lead with my left hand instead of my right hand, because you'll start to see that even the teachers have their patterns of the things that they kind of get biased towards, but just to challenge, how am I going to use my body in a rhythmic activity? But to me, it's a good workout, but really it's in terms of maintaining rhythmic activity in my body and back and forth activity and some cardiovascular and some strength sorts of things. I love it.
Yeah, that's one of the most unique answers I've ever heard on here, and it makes sense to me.
So
but I like that.
That's about the only PRI stuff I do.
I love it. That's
It's
great.
kickboxing.
Right, because you're living your life.
And every now and then I lead a song, and about halfway through the song I end up back on my right side, leading with my right side, and it's fine, but I did it, right?
Yeah.
But that's about as much as I do PRI
perspective.
wise.
That's great.
What exercise do you do? Well,
Yeah.
No, if I have to shovel snow and my back is tight or whatever, that's
then-
fine. Now, luckily, I've had some ankle sprains and I do fine, but I'm fairly healthy.
Yeah.
Knock on wood.
Yeah.
I haven't had any issues.
That's great.
But if I were, I know what I do.
Right.
So.
Well, this was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing
Well,
your knowledge.
thanks for just sitting down. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this was so great. I'm so glad we did this, and
Yeah, me too.
this is going to help a lot of people. I know
Good.
it will.
Good.
So
And I know I get long-winded, and hopefully it doesn't.
no, this was
it
perfect.
doesn't
This was
get
so
too far, but,
perfect.
yeah.
I
Good.
loved it. I loved every second. So thank you.
Well, thanks for being here, and congratulations on your
Thank
on your
you.
PRT. That's awesome.
It was such an amazing experience.
It's so cool.